a 12 days war in between the United States and Israel on one side and Iran on the other side. But something happened in the first day of attack against Iran that still the Donald Trump says he doesn't know if it was the United States or someone else. Pete Hegseth, it says he's assessing that, but something strange came out of, from the Trump administration. Or Donald Trump himself said that many people have these Tomahawk missiles. They may use them. He referring to Iranian, army to use those Tomahawk missiles against the primary school in Iran. And here is what Michael Maloof, the ex-Pentagon analyst, said on RT Russia Today about what has happened.
That it came from the United States. As you point out, just those 4 countries outside the United States possess Tomahawks. It's my understanding that it was that it was from U.S. Ships, and that it was a double tap, or what we would, or at least 2. One came down, hit the school. The children, as I understand it, were trying to be rushed into the surviving students into another part that was not bombed, and then the second one came down and killed the remaining children and staff. So this is a very terrible thing, and Trump is just in denial, and he needs to fess up to it.
Yeah, he's. What is your understanding of what has happened, and why did it happen? Because still, look at what's going on in Iran. The first day, what has happened in the first day is so much important, so much influential. Until many people are talking about it. It was so much. It was a tragedy when you look at it.
Well, it's a tragedy. It's also a war crime. First of all, we need to start off by saying, there's been no publicly available investigation carried out by the United States. So we're operating in a vacuum. I respect Mr. Maloof, and I agree with him, but we don't know what ship it was fired from. We don't know which variant of the Tomahawk it was, but again, forensically, we can reconstruct a lot of this stuff. The Iranians have provided some information, and some of that information proves that it was a Tomahawk. Remember, it's the imagery from Iran that shows that it was a Tomahawk on the re-attack. But we do need to point out that any in-depth conversation, which is, I'm sure, what you want, is going to require informed speculation, connecting the dots. Now, the good news is, Nima, you actually have a guy who's been decorated twice by the director of the CIA for connecting the dots, decorated by General Schwarzkopf for connecting the dots. I get a lot of commendations for connecting the dots. I'm pretty good at it. So I'm willing to go through this exercise with you, but I just want people to understand that until we get the official reports, till we have hard data, there's just a lot of speculation involved. Okay, we know the United States incorporated a large number of Tomahawk cruise missiles on the first day of the strike. The exact number, again, hasn't been released by the Pentagon to the best of my knowledge, nor has the sources of the ships where they came from. But basically, we know the U.S. Navy uses what's known as the Block 4, the 4th generation of the Tomahawk. There's a Block 5 under development, may actually been deployed in a number of cases, but the Block 4 is the workhorse of the Tomahawk fleet. And we can talk about the Tomahawk comfortably because we have the photograph, and the president has sort of suggested that a Tomahawk was involved. He just says it may came from Great Britain, the Netherlands, Japan, some of the other nations that are possessing these weapons, not the United States, but it came from the United States. There's just literally no doubt about that. What the Tomahawk Block 4 is, let's say it's launched from a destroyer, an Aegis destroyer, Arleigh class, or some other class. It's launched from a control room, and so the each missile can be programmed, and actually the Block 4 can actually be programmed up to 15 different missiles, and you can select it. And the other interesting thing is you can redirect it, as needed. So let's say you're firing, and you need to be redirected to another target for priority. There's a communications link, and the control room can actually redirect them and all that. But basically, they are operating off of a master plan. The initial strike is a very carefully planned thing, and basically it's time on target. You don't want to start it prematurely and give advance, so everything flows into strike just about the same time. So you're going to launch, a ship's here, a ship's there. This ship that's further away is going to fire first, and then you'll fire. And the idea is that you're going to come in, and hit your target at the same time as aircraft are flying, releasing their standoff munitions. So it's all a carefully choreographed thing, and the targets are picked for maximum effect of the shock and awe of the goals and objectives. If you want to suppress this, that, and the other thing. So all this data has to be factored. Why can I speak about this? Gosh, I helped plan the strategic air campaign against Iraq, and I know intimately what went into the first night strike against Iraq in Operation Desert Storm, and past practice repeat themselves. So we can imagine that even though there's been technological updates, the same concepts apply to this one. So basically, a target deck was picked, and then each target was selected. You assign a weapon to each target based upon the damage you want, weapons availability, etc. Some will be struck by aircraft, some will be struck by cruise missiles. And so you're doing that. Now, what goes into the target deck? This is where your campaign priorities come into play. We know a couple of things. We know that regime change was definitely one of the priorities. We also know that suppression of Iranian ballistic missile capability or cruise missile capability is another priority. And so, I'm getting phone calls nonstop. I'm doing my best to keep calm. I just blew up on my last interview and lost my temper. So I'm trying to keep it calm here. My wife has told me to stop doing interviews because I'm becoming too emotionally involved. But when we're talking about the murder of 176 kids, how can you not become emotionally involved, especially when it's your country that committed mass murder? But anyways, we come back to the targeting. So now we have target types. So normally what happens is you have targeteers, people like me who sit behind a desk, and they said, go through the list. You have this national target base. Everything in the world is targeted by the United States. We've taken photographs of everything, and every photograph we take, every place, whether it's a bridge in Tajikistan or a warehouse in Vladivostok, it's in the database, and it's got a target number attached to it. And so I can sit there, at least I used to be able to. You used to have to do it by microfiche. I mean, you put the old microfiche down there and do it manually and handwrite the notes and then print it up and put it together. And, then we got computers, and it was all computerized. You could type in search words and you could get all that stuff. But it's hard work because now you have to pull up that stuff. Then a lot of times they haven't digitized everything. So even if you get the master list, you have to go into the microfiche and pull up the fiche and the fiche reader and go blind reading the microfiche or print it out and then type up your own reports. I did this in 1985 when we went through the target deck for Iran, by the way, the invasion of Bandar Abbas. I went through the whole database of targets, updated them, looked at ones, is that bridge still there? Bridge was built in 1956. Well, gosh, it's 1985. Do you think the bridge is still there? Has it been replaced? If it's replaced, what is the construction type of the bridge? Do we have to change the targeting parameters? All this, have the roads changed? I mean, this bridge might have been strategic in 56, but maybe a bigger road has been built and it's no longer strategic. We can look, you had to scrub the whole thing. That's what I did. And then, you do the same thing. But the point is, you have to confirm each target, what it is. You have to confirm what it's built out of, because that plays a role in what's going to blow it up. And then you have to also scrub and say, in 1956, when this bridge was built, you had a village over here, but that village could have expanded. We noticed there was an expansion rate in 56. Maybe that village has actually grown around the bridge, and maybe there's a mosque right next to the bridge now. We might want to look at imagery and evaluate so you have to do this thing. You have to go in and update it. You got to make sure that if we're blowing something up, there's a reason why we're blowing it up, and that we're not inadvertently striking a school, a mosque, a hospital, anything of that nature. It's the law of war. The law of war requires this. The 1949 Geneva Conventions, then the additional protocol to those, 1977, been adapted into the Department of Defense Law of War Manual. So I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen. When you take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, this is what you're talking about here. This is what you're talking about, the law of war. You're talking about the rule of law. And military professionals take this stuff very seriously because it's our job. We're not here to do Pete Hegseth murder. We're here to uphold and defend the Constitution. And if our commander-in-chief gives us instructions to go to war, we have to ensure that the war we wage, in addition to be lethal and effective and victorious, is legal and moral and just, as much as the extent that any war could ever be, moral and just. You're murdering people. But, law of war is a funny thing because it basically creates a legal framework to commit murder in. But that's what the law says. So this is what we do. This is what we did. And so somebody's supposed to do that now for Iran. But as I said, the database that I'm working off of for the operation plan to go into Bandar Abbas was a war plan that's been around for a while. And it had an established target deck that I needed to scrub, remove some targets, add new targets, things of that nature. But you had a target deck. This war plan that's being executed against Iran is completely different. This is a strategic air campaign that was ginned up literally in January, because we know that the war plan for January 17th, when Donald Trump was saying, help is on the way, there was a war plan, but that was a regime change war plan. And it was stopped because the Pentagon went, what about the missiles? If we bomb the regime, and they start launching missiles, we don't have enough defense capability here. And we need to suppress this. We can't let them just fire missiles at will. So that's why they stopped the action in January. That's why we flowed in all this air defense, all the THAADs, the Patriots, we built it up. And then under that umbrella of perceived protection, we then to flow in the military power. And that military power dictated the plan. We had ships coming in, we had planes coming in, and now they said, these are the resources we have, let's give them targets. And they started making the targets up because they weren't ready to do that national suppression thing. Now they're making the targets. So this is a war plan that was ginned up very quickly. That's okay, because that's what intelligence officers do. That's the job we do. That's why we're fat and we eat donuts. We have glasses. We can sit behind a desk and we look at shit and we make decisions. Some of us are in the field and get a little lean and mean, but most part, intelligence officers, we don't live the sexy life. This isn't James Bond. It meant sitting behind a desk and evaluating data, rolling through the data. But we don't do that anymore. You see, the job I used to do, they've streamlined it. And so what happened is we use artificial intelligence to do targeting. And I hate the term artificial intelligence because there's nothing intelligent about it. It's basically parameter driven. You say, go through that database. Remember that database I was telling you about, all the things, everything is targeted. It's all there and they have dimensions and all that. So now you have somebody say, gosh, we're supposed to be bombing facilities that the Revolutionary Guard Command could be using to hide missiles, missile storage facilities, et cetera. So you have the naval facility in Minab, has warehouses in it, has buildings in it. And so they sit there and they say, okay, here's the dimension of structure we're looking for, this by this. Generate a target list of all structures that meet that criteria. And so the artificial intelligence does that. Now, that's okay. I mean, that's a good way to jumpstart it. If you want to do that, that's a good. I still would want to double check it because, I trust the human brain, and I'm the kind of guy that believes that there's always the gem that didn't get picked up. The most important target isn't the obvious target, and if I spend enough time on the light table looking at a photograph, I'm going to go, that's the real target. AI can't give you that. This brain can because I'm thinking, I'm doing. But so I'd still want to scrub it, but it's a good way to start. You start with this. And so the Manab base once used to be a big base, the whole base. And so the database that in there, AI, instead of discriminating, which is, again, the human brain would go, well, gosh, you're pulling me a data set that's from 2005. And at that time, Manab was one giant Revolutionary Guard naval base. But we know in 2013, they carved out this section. They carved it out. And I'll just give you another thing. We run a program, or we used to run a program. I don't know if we run it anymore. But, every Iranian that leaves Iran and goes to Dubai, and does the smuggling thing. Gets debriefed by the CIA. We can do it directly or we can do it indirectly, but we have a CIA presence there and in Abu Dhabi and all the places. And we talk to everybody. What happens to that kid, the Basij, that joins the Revolutionary Guard Command? He gets stationed in Manab, does his 2-year assignment, gets out, and then he gets a job on a fishing boat, a dhow, and he starts moving stuff back and forth in Abu. Now he comes in, and we caught him buying some weed because, Iranians are human. So he's in there smoking weed, and the locals got him. So we sit down, we say, hey, what we want from you, who were you? I was this. I used to be a private in the RD. So you're in Manab? Yeah. Here's a map. Tell us about Manab. And he'll sit there and point it all out. We'll say, okay, well, what you do is when you go back, just talk to people and just try and get an update. Go to your friends that are still there and then just come back and we'll report. And that they do that. The reason why I bring this up is those target packages that I spoke of continually are updated with human intelligence or imagery. We have imagery analysts who will repeatedly go over and go, Manab expanded this, did that. And then that imagery assessment goes to the human guys who sit there and talk to the guy. Hey, we understand there's a new place built in Manab. Here, what's there? And we do this. This is the way you develop target packages. Now, I don't know if we still do it because it's a lot of work. And a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people just thought it was a scut work because we're never going to go to war against Iran. So why are we wasting so much time building up target information about Minab? But we used to do that. That used to be a thing. But the point is, there's a lot of data there. But unless AI is programmed into that, maybe the AI thing hasn't been given access because human intelligence, is something that we don't share with everybody. It gets compartmented. And some sensitive imagery intelligence, some sensitive SIGINT intelligence, it gets compartmented. So if I'm doing a broad brush, basic top secret, which top secret for a strike package means it's top secret because we're going to strike, but we're only talking secret information. No SCI, no special information, just a basic scrub of secret information. That's basic imagery analysis, old school stuff, nothing sexy. So it's going to generate the oldest map possible. It doesn't have all the human intelligence updates. It doesn't have the SIGINT updates that talk about the frequencies that are operating there, give you an order of battle. We intercepted this frequency. These are the units attached. That's here. Boom, boom. This one moved here. This one moved there. This is an empty building now. This has been converted to a hospital, and this has been converted to a school. Oh, we don't have that because that's sensitive. You're just doing a broad-based intelligence sweep of the data. So now you generate, let's say, Manab. And the evidence suggests that there were 4 targets picked in Manab of interest. And that means that 4 buildings of a specific size deemed to be usable by the Iranians to hide cruise missiles, drones, or whatever are there. So now we're going to strike these 4 buildings. We used to have something in 2023. Joe Biden's administration signed off on a directive to create something called the Civilian Harm and Mitigation Resources team. And their job was to work with commands as they develop courses of action, as they develop target lists. Their job was to go through the targets and evaluate each target to make sure that that was what it was, that it wasn't next to a school, that it wasn't a school, that it wasn't a mosque. It was, and that's what their job was. Now, this is it's constricting. I can understand if you're a warrior who wants to bomb and suddenly you have a geek like Scott Ritter coming in going, hey, mosque across the road, what munition you dropping on that? 2,000-pound bomb ain't going to cut it. You dropped a 2,000-pound bomb, you're going to get collateral damage, and we're prohibited by law from doing anything to that mosque. Well, they don't like to hear that. That's constricting. That's restricting the ability of the military to be lethal. No, it's called the rule of law, the Constitution. It's sort of a thing, if you believe in it. Well, Pete Hegseth comes rolling in. Now he's Secretary of War. And he says, I'm doing away with all that. Doing away with it. He canceled that directive. There is no more civilian harm mitigation team. There is no more scrutiny of targets. We are rules free. And he has said it. No rules of engagement, no constraining rules of engagement. We are maximum lethality. Maximum lethality. So now the one team that could have come in and gone 2 warehouses, okay. That third one you want to strike, that's a hospital, guys. We don't bomb hospitals. Oh, and this thing up here, it's a school. We've known that since 2016. It's a secondary school for girls. We got a lot of reporting here. We had a guy come across in a Dow and tell us that they had carved that off, and his daughter actually goes to that school, and he named the teachers and everything. We got this all in a report. That team was done away with. Now we just have 4 targets. So now we come to the opening day of the war, and we got an Arleigh class destroyer up there, and it's participating in it. So it's given its assignment, and so you can have that. It's capable of cycling off a number of rounds, so it can do multiple tasks. But there's a team in there that's been given the task of monitoring the attack on Manab, and they're going to fire the munitions necessary. So you have 4 targets. You need 4 points of impact. But here's the problem. Now, this is a classified number, so I'm just going to make one up because I'm not allowed to talk about it. We know that the Tomahawk doesn't work a certain percentage of time. We knew that since the Gulf War. They've declassified a lot of data about how we fought that war. What they won't tell you is what the failure rate of the Tomahawk was, because they don't want anybody to know that. But we have a rough idea because we fired 60 some odd Tomahawks against Syria. Remember that, 2017, Donald Trump? And we know that I think 21 of them didn't work. That's about a 1/3 non-functioning rate. Now, I'm not saying that's related to the Gulf War. I'm not allowed to say that. I'm just saying that in Syria, it was about a 1 out of 3 didn't work. That's a lot. But to give you an idea of what the military thinks, again, I'm just using data here, guys. There's 4 targets. They fired 5 missiles. Why would you fire 5 missiles? Because 1 out of 4 is anticipated not to work. That's about a 25% failure rate. I'm not saying that's a number. I'm just saying that appears to be what's happening here. So you cycle off 4 cruise missiles to go to the target. Each one has a point. The 5th one, it's a block 4, has the ability to loiter over the site and take imagery and send that imagery back to the ship so they can monitor battle damage assessment. Because you want to hit all these targets, take them out, and you anticipate the potential of 1 out of 4 failing. So you have the 5th back up there to look. If you get a fail, it can reattack. And so the first 4 come in, bam, bam, hit the 2 warehouses, punch holes in them. Nothing. No secondary explosion, nothing. It's empty because, gosh, Minab hasn't been functioning for a while. We knew that because we had the defector reports and everything, but the computer didn't know that because it's AI, and we didn't have a civilian mitigation team that would have confirmed it. I mean, if I was on that team, I went, I don't think there's anything in there, but there could be. It's a military target. So these are good targets. Hit them. The first 2 targets are good targets. You're allowed to hit those. No problem. 3rd one, it's a hospital. We punched a hole in the hospital, and there's smoke coming out. So I'd say, well, we hit it. There's smoke. Good secondary effects. Mission accomplished. Now, if I had been on the mitigation team, I would have said, you guys just committed a war crime because you struck a hospital. Keep that in mind. We committed a war crime because we struck a hospital. But that's okay. Forget that. Now we come to the other one. It hits it. We get a partial collapse. But now the missile's flying around. It's seen 2 holes with no smoke. It's seen a 3rd hole with smoke. And it's looking at the 4th target. And what does it see? Movement on the ground. It sees a lot of movement on the ground. There's people inside moving to a building. There's people outside coming to that building. And the guys on the ship, they're sitting there. Their job is to destroy. And so they're like, okay, destroyed. Movement, people coming in. We haven't completely neutralized this target. Reattack. So that cruise missile goes up, boom, hits the target, the reattack. Now, the interesting thing about the Block 4 is the warhead that's probably used on there is I forget the exact name, but it's a combined effects munition. It's designed basically to punch through concrete and then blow up inside and destroy what's inside. So you're not going to get the full 1,000-pound bomb because people are like, that's not the size of 1,000, because it's not a 1,000 pound. It's a lesser. It's a combined effects munition. The other thing about the Block 4, though, is that when they were testing it, they realized that there's a lot of unexploded fuel here. That's potential because, again, this is a munition. So they designed it so that you could convert the unexpended fuel into a fuel air explosive, and you can get this additional thermal effect on the target. So this went down, punched through the hole of the building where the people were going in. You get the combined effects blast, so fragmentation blast, explosive blast. But on top of that, you get a little thermobaric action going in, burning everything up inside. And of course, they hit, and that's it. We got 4 out of 4. Good job. The problem is that last target was a school, and the first cruise missile that hit collapsed some of the structures affiliated with the functioning of the school. The surviving teachers and students, and many of them did survive. There were casualties in the initial strike, but many of them survived, were being ushered into the last remaining safe place. It's like what happens if you have a school shooting. Take the kids to the cafeteria, take the kids to the library, take the kids to the safe place, the place where they're going to be safe. If there's a tornado, take them to the gymnasium. Well, the safest place in that structure was the prayer hall. Take the kids to the prayer hall. And so they're evacuating them. Kids are coming in, the teacher bringing them, trying to calm them down. They're also calling the parents and saying, hey, something's happened here. You need to come and get your children. So parents start to arrive. So this is the movement that the cruise missile is seeing, that the guys on the ship are seeing. They're seeing teachers taking children into the prayer hall. They're seeing first responders coming in, and they're seeing parents start to arrive to collect their children. But they ordered the reattack anyways. If you read the accounts of there's accounts that coming out of Iran that talk about this. You have a parent that talks about, I could only recognize my child because of her backpack, because what was left of my child was nothing, ashes, burned, incinerated. That's the thermobaric effect. Only could recognize the child because of the backpack. And other parents have spoken about the same thing, the horror that they confronted there with their dead children. It's one thing to pull a dead body out of a rubble. It's another thing not to have anything left because of what happened. 176, I think the number may have gone up even higher than that now, 180 or so. Innocent children between the ages of 6 and 12 murdered. And that's what it was. It was a deliberate murder. This wasn't an accident. You don't have accidents anymore. I'm just trying to tell you, especially when the way you mitigate against accidents is to have procedures in place, like creating a civilian harm mitigation team that reviews targets to make sure the targets comply with the law of war, which is not something that is, optional. The law of war is mandatory. If you disobey the law of war, we actually have a law on the books in the United States about, War Crimes Act. You know what the penalty for deliberately committing a war crime is? Death. Death. So if you're in the U.S. military and you deliberately commit a war crime, you can be sentenced to death. And what happened in Manab is a war crime, because there were so many failures. We're supposed to be military professionals. We know what the laws are. We're not allowed to bomb schools. We're not allowed to bomb hospitals. We're not allowed to bomb mosques. Sort of black and white. And so we have a duty and responsibility under international law to ensure that we do the necessary homework to make sure that it's called distinction. We have to distinguish between military targets and civilian targets. It's a duty before you bomb, especially in a pre-planned environment where you have the time. It's another thing if you're under fire. I mean, there's a lot more latitude. If I'm under fire and I'm taking fire and my Marines are going down, I'm returning fire, I don't have time to sit there and do a full target analysis. I'm just going to eliminate the threat to my Marines. So there's a lot of latitude. They go, Scott, you fired into a school. Well, God damn it, there was a machine gun firing at me from that school. So therefore, it lost its protected status. You get to sort of shortcut the checks and balances thing. But when you're doing a pre-planned attack, where there is no imminent threat, you get to pick the time and the date you want. And that's what happened on day one. We picked the time and date. We decided to attack that place at this time, that date, with this munition. So if you're going to do that, then you must obey the law of war. You must. So anytime you're going to put a munition on a target, you have a legal responsibility to make sure that target is a military target. And that the other reason that's important is there's another thing called proportionality. You have to make sure that the munition you're using is proportional to what you expect to do from that. So, for instance, we had that building there. We wouldn't be allowed to drop a nuclear bomb on that building because we're just trying to destroy cruise missiles that might be inside. That's disproportional use of force. We probably even couldn't drop a Moab on it. Don't want to drop a 2,000-pound bomb on it. Again, proportionality. So you're going to come in with a cruise missile with a combined effects munition, decide to punch a hole in the roof and destroy what's inside. That is proportional to the threat. the law of war. They obeyed that, but they didn't do my dogs were upset about the use of cruise missiles against children too, but they didn't do the requirement to distinguish. They went because Pete Hegseth said that's too constraining. Lethal warriors don't distinguish. We kill. And I mean, literally, he's saying this. We kill. We're maximum lethality. So he did away with, and it's not just the civilian harm mitigation team. That's an extra layer that was put in because after the global war on terror, the United States found that even though the law requires us to distinguish, that many times military planners just were skipping through that. And so this was an additional procedure in place to make sure that we adhered to the law of war. And so now there's a directive that says you have to do this and resources provided. But Hegseth got rid of that. So that's a premeditated act to remove the constraints, to remove the procedures that would protect against a crime. And this is a horrific war crime carried out by a Secretary of Defense. I know people want to call him Secretary of War, but he's not a Secretary of Defense. That's the legal term, who committed a war crime. And this has intent. We know he intended to be maximum lethal because he said so. And he facilitated the crime by eliminating all the checks and balances that could have prevented this. And he also failed in the way he did targeting. If you're going to subcontract out to a artificial intelligence civilian platform, which we did, there must be supervision. There has to be some sort of supervision. You can't just receive a package and go, we're good. No. You have to do the due diligence. You have to have somebody go through and make sure that everything they say in there is good. They didn't do that. Pete Hegseth did that. He streamlined murder. And then the U.S. military executed the murder. And so every one of those children was murdered by the United States Navy on that. And everybody in that kill chain should be held accountable because people say, well, why would the sailors be doing? Because you have a moral duty under the law of war before you apply munition to target to make sure that the law of war has been applied. If you're going to bomb a target, you have a right to say, has this been properly vetted? You handed me a completed thing, but has this been properly vetted? And if you're also an admiral general and you know that the directive has been canceled, you have a duty and responsibility to say, I'm not bombing this target until we do our own civilian harm mitigation. I know you've canceled that directive, but that doesn't supersede the law of war manual. The law of war manual requires me to review this target. They didn't. They skipped over that. So it's not just Hegseth, but it's everybody in the kill chain below that is culpable in the murder of these children. There are no innocents here. Everywhere, somebody that, again, you're that chief petty officer sitting in the Aegis destroyer, looking at the imagery coming in from the cruise missile overhead, and you see people moving in, and the officer on duty says, "Reattack." You go, "No, sir, I refuse to obey that order." Sir, we don't know who those people are. We don't know what they are. These could be first responders coming in. We have no positive identification of these people, and therefore we have no legal authority to strike this target. We cannot strike the target. That's the legal responsibility. That's what a moral warrior would do. And the officer, if he was also moral and taking a note to Constitution, you're absolutely right. No reattack. What are the 15 targets in there? Boom. Okay, send this cruise missile off to target Alpha 01001 and complete the mission there. And then you go expend that munition on a legitimate lawful target. But if you're sitting there looking at bodies coming in, you have to stop and say, we need to know who those people are. We can make no assumptions here. We have to know who they are before we move on. This has changed. We went from destroying a building to killing people. Okay, we put a hole in a building, but now we have people moving around in there. Who are they? What are they? What are they doing? And we have to confirm that this is a valid military target, put that on target. And the people in the destroyer, with all due respect to them, I wish I could court-martial you. I'd love to have you on the stand because you're going to jail for the rest of your life. There is no defense for what you did. You are war criminals. And this is why I tell everybody in the U.S. military right now, you better start looking in the mirror because one day you're going to be my age. Right now you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're strong and you're virile and you're like, I'm a warrior and I'm tough. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, guys. I know what I'm talking about here. One day you're going to be my age. You're going to look in the mirror and you're going to be reflecting back on what you did in your life. And every single one of you guys are responsible for the deaths of those 180 plus children. They're on you. You murdered them. And now you got to look in the mirror and say, I'm a murderer, because you are. It's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. You did nothing to stop it. Nothing. I do that. I look in the mirror and I wonder about the over 400 people that I'm responsible for killing in Amaria, because I was part of that kill chain, Amaria bomb shelter. But I know I can look back and say, I did everything according to the book. I did everything according to law. I looked at, the Mark 14 intercept that was linked to presidential command and control, that was linked to Scud. And we were in the business of stopping the Scud launches. We had an emergency going on where Israel was threatening to come into war if we didn't stop the Scud launches, and we were trying to interrupt the Scud decision, chain. And so Mark 14 communications linked there. Check. And then we asked the question: is there evidence of people coming in? No, none. There was no evidence that this was being used as a bomb shelter. Yes, back in the Gulf War, in Iran-Iraq War, it was. But now it looks like it had been converted to a command and control center. And we had all the reason to believe it was. We did the checks and balances, and we were wrong. And that lives with me forever. We were wrong, but we didn't commit a crime. We obeyed the law of war. We did everything we were required by the law of war. And unfortunately, tragically, we slaughtered a lot of people. And I look in the mirror every day, but the guy looking back says, you did your job. It's tragic. This is why I'm so against war, because I did my job, but we killed those people.